I don't talk about it much on this channel, but I adore Koei-Tecmo's Warriors franchise. But it's been difficult to get particularly excited about it for a while. After Warriors Odyssey 4 and Warriors All-Stars were just fine, Dynasty Warriors 9 was abysmal, and 9 Empires removed the one aspect of 9 that would have made an Empires installment based on it interesting. So when Samurai Warriors 5 was announced, the first numbered Samurai Warriors since 2014, sporting a reworked art style, significantly cut down cast and drastic revamps of many of the staple characters that did return, I was uncertain how to feel about it, but I've now played through the entire game and I have some thoughts. But before that, there's quite a tale behind this video. KT Europe put out a form for content creators to fill in to receive a review code. I filled one in, didn't hear back, and pre-ordered the game myself. I happened to check my junk email folder on the day of release and found that I had indeed been sent a review code about half a week earlier, and I'd missed it until launch. My first review code ever. Not only that, but the second email telling me the code had been sent and that I should check the junk folder was also in the junk folder. Might be good for these forms to ask for a secondary communication method like Twitter or Discord. And on top of that, I was knee deep in the MK11 critique at the time and wanted to focus on that and the odd smaller project, and so I didn't have time to edit any of this until now. But yeah, all this to say, product provided by Koei-Tecmo. Probably the last one I'm going to receive from them, let's be real. Samurai Warriors 5 is less a sequel to SW4 and more a sequel to Spirit of Sanada. Like SOS, this game narrows the scope to tell a more personal story about one faction, rather than try to tell the full story of Japan's Sengoku era. In this case, the focus is on the rise and fall of Oda Nobunaga, perhaps the most noticeably reworked character in the game, as well as his friendship with Akechi Mitsuhide. Like SOS, these two age up later in the game. The campaign is split into 5 sections in a way. You begin with Nobunaga's path, unlocking Mitsuhide's after a few chapters. Each path has side stories focused on supporting characters where the leads aren't present. And finally, we have the Reverie chapter, unlocked after finishing the campaign, which deviates from the core story and either tells one-off alternate outcomes, or an ongoing alternate campaign where major deaths are averted, similar to the hypothetical routes of Dynasty Warriors 8 and Samurai Warriors Chronicles 3. These are great to see since a lot of the historical Warriors titles in the last decade have focused much more, if not exclusively, on the historical route, meaning even the protagonists have to meet their historical fate. Unfortunately, some of these side stages are unlocked at a strange time, particularly those involving Ieyasu. After he is captured by the Imagawa early on, he returns to fight for them, now with a wife, and he claims he owes Yoshimoto a debt. Only after Yoshimoto is killed and Ieyasu rejoins Nobunaga do we unlock the chapter where we get an explanation for this. And it happens in a worse way towards the end of the game, but I won't spoil that one. Mitsuhide has a number of stages shared with Nobunaga, often allowing you to use the same characters with really only some changes to dialogue and nothing else different, but still counting it as 2 separate stages, similar to how 4-2 approach stages shared between campaigns. You get a bit of it early on, but it's mostly later on once Mitsuhide joins Nobunaga that this is an issue. Still, I'd recommend trying to keep up with Mitsuhide's story as you play through Nobunaga's, because some plot developments happen in Mitsuhide's first, so they kinda come out of nowhere when they continue in Nobunaga's if you haven't experienced Mitsuhide's first. The story itself is fine. It's about what one would expect from this series at this point, but with a few twists and turns that are wholly unique to this telling. The story is comparable to Kessen 3 with its more heroic take on Nobunaga, which will typically go either down a route where Nobunaga becomes more villainous over time, or where other figures are reworked to be more villainous and Nobunaga's villainous actions are presented in a more sympathetic light. This game does a bit of both. As stated previously, most of the characters that did return have been given new looks, personalities and voices, like Nobunaga and Nohime, while others have stayed largely the same, like Mitsuhide and Nagamasa. The recasting generally lines up with the new characterizations, with those whose actors got to return being largely the same as their SW4 selves. The new characterizations are largely fine, although some of the characters are more flat now, like Nohime, who I do like, but I prefer the previous version. The newcomers are a pretty solid lineup, from Yamanaka Shikanosuke, who offers the other side of the Mori Amago conflict for the first time, to Ieyasu's tragic wife Senahime, to one of my new favourites, the redhead ninja girl claiming to be Nobunaga's daughter Mitsuki, to the obsidian samurai himself Yasuke, who gets a really big push in this game and is even voiced by a non-Japanese actor. We also have a ton of unique NPCs who are all playable, some even in the story. They just lack any unique moves like the other characters have. Despite the revamp though, the game still sticks to the old rule that once a person becomes a unique character, they can never go back to being a generic officer and will simply be left out entirely, as seen with Jiang Wei's absence from DW6 despite his significance to the battle the game ends on. A number of the factions are hit hard by this, like the Sanada and E-clans barely existing at all, the Uesugi being Kenshin and some generics, and the Hojo being completely left out of the game. I do feel that the absence of the likes of Ranmaru, Gracia and Naotora is strange, given the focus on his lord, her father and her lords respectively, and it makes me wonder how this game will be followed up. We could see a 5-2 that picks up after this campaign and follows Hideyoshi and Ieyasu's rise, bringing back the likes of Yukimura, Mitsunari and the Hojo clan, or maybe they'll save that for number 6 and make 5 Extreme Legends, expanding on the existing material from this game with more characters and battles, like those aforementioned absentees. Maybe they'll have every main entry from now on be a more focused experience centered on a certain clan, character or event, with characters being revamped to suit the new narrative. If we don't have everyone back by the next Empire's release, will they just port over the old versions like they did with Katsuyori? I can't see some of these new takes lasting long term in new continuities like the much more antagonistic Shingen, Kenshin and Motonari, who feel like their new incarnations were written around the premise of being predominantly enemies fought by Nobunaga and his allies. It's a genuinely exciting time to be a Samurai Warriors fan, with so many possibilities for how the series could move forward after this, the first genuinely good revamp the Warriors franchise has had. The aesthetic is mostly the same in terms of how the characters are designed, but with flatter textures and black outlines for a more painted style, which is really highlighted in the wonderful new splash art seen when a character performs a Muso Frenzy attack, seemingly drawing on the all-out attack splash art from Persona 5. I'm not sure if these are actual art or cleverly rendered in-engine, since the costume you're using is also reflected in the image, which even P5 didn't do. In terms of gameplay, not much has changed since the previous game, and I'm thankful for that. While it may be a tad repetitive for those who've played the full scope of the SW4 series like me, with how much else has been changed with the presentation and characters and roster size, it's good that something has been kept consistent to make the game still feel like the same series and not some cheap Chinese knockoff. The biggest change is the new ultimate skills, which are cooldown based abilities ranging from temporary buffs to special attacks that are unique to each weapon or character. Unfortunately, the movesets have been completely overhauled, which has historically not worked out great for Dynasty Warriors, with the same issue of clone movesets that plagued DW 6, 7 and 9 being present here. And even more unfortunately, the systems Dynasty Warriors 7 and Strike Force introduced to mitigate the issue are not present here. Most weapons are shared by at least 2 characters, especially the more generic weapons like swords and spears, which are the tools of the NPCs as well. Each proper playable character has some unique moves similar to DW7's EX attacks, which are unique extra attacks performed at the end of specific combo strings. Each character also has a unique Muso attack and one unique ultimate skill. However, while any character can equip any weapon, there is no on-the-fly weapon switching like Dynasty Warriors has. This meant that you could make the characters who share movesets more unique yourself by assigning different secondary weapons to each. But this game doesn't offer this, even though both leads get a second preferred weapon during the campaign, and the ability to utilise both at once would be fantastic. For me, the lack of such a mechanic makes the entire system pointless because you're replacing your main weapon with a worse one that doesn't have any unique abilities. I would use the system a lot if not for the fact that I'd be giving up a better moveset entirely to utilise it. Fortunately, the new movesets are very good, and some of them are among the best in the franchise. Plus, it's just nice to see new animations here. Dynasty overhauled the animations back in 6, but Samurai has kept them the same since the beginning, and it created a stark contrast between animations made in 2014 versus those kept since 2004. The new movesets feel less stiff and more powerful. I like it. In terms of performance, I never noticed any slowdown, which affects most Warriors type games to varying degrees, but there is a strange thing that does happen. I don't even know if I'll be able to capture it as I record footage, but the game sometimes freezes for half a second, usually when entering one of the splash screens, which really does dampen the impact by making it far less smooth than Persona 5. It's that kind of like you'd sometimes see when getting an achievement on an Xbox 360 game. I have no idea what causes it, but it can hopefully be ironed out with a patch. The game's side mode is Citadel Mode, a defense-focused mode where you defend the gates of a fort to prevent the enemy from getting inside, while completing side objectives and defeating enemy officers. It's a little bland and repetitive, and you sadly have to play through this mode to upgrade the facilities to get better weapons, horses and items. The reward is special social events between certain pairs of characters, obtained by raising their relationship values, which will take around 3 stages to achieve. In terms of release, the game was announced for the West alongside the Japanese announcement, which is pretty much unheard of with this franchise, where we often have to wait about 6 months for the localized version, and typically only about a month or 2 before that do we even know if we're getting one. Persona 5 Strikers recently took a year to release here, and we only found out it was coming about 2 months out. For the DLC offerings, we've unfortunately not got a lot. We have a £27 season pass that gives you 6 stages, a new skin for each weapon, 6 new horses and some music tracks. Outside of the season pass, there were Samurai Warriors 1 costumes for Nobunaga and Mitsuhide, as well as the older and younger costumes for the opposite version. That's it. We don't get the J-drama tie-in costumes, but they've never brought those over to the West, so it was to be expected. For some galling reason, we don't get the 7-11 Hideyoshi reskin, nor do we get the really cool Neo-inspired recolor for Nohime. You look at older games like Dynasty Warriors 7 and 8 or Warriors Odyssey 3, and you'd get all these old costumes and even new weapon types in the Dynasty games, and for a decent price. With this game you barely get anything, not even retro costumes for the returning cast, and there's content they didn't even bother to bring over to the West despite how little there is overall. And the stages are scenarios we've seen a dozen times. The smartest characters compete to see who's smartest. The women get together for a scenario, the one where everyone is oddly laser focused on something pointless and stupid. Unfortunately, the company's DLC practices as a whole are disgusting and lazy at this point, with Neo and some licensed titles being the only games to get anything decent anymore. Overall, I enjoyed my time with Samurai Warriors 5 and I'm excited to see where the series will go from here. Will we see a direct continuation? Will Dynasty Warriors get a revamp like this? Will Warriors Odyssey use these versions of the characters, and if so, will it be a reboot of the Odyssey story? Will we see a crossover between the new and old casts? The game is, unfortunately, held back by a mediocre side mode, not enough systems to make the clone movesets less of a problem, and the truly awful DLC practices and outputs. Hopefully they'll be able to expand on the systems in the next entry to make the characters more unique and come up with a better side mode. I'm not holding out hope for better DLC practices though, not when DOA exists. If you liked this video, why not subscribe and support me on Patreon like these fine people here? If not, then make sure to share it with your enemies so they can suffer along with you. Today's recommended video is Chris Geldart's Samurai Warriors 5 review, which actually did release on time.